those of you who follow what I say on various social media platforms, chief of which is Twitter, will know my views, will know the answer to this question of who is less incorrect, Michael Jones or Jared Taylor, on the question of whether race can be your religion. If you watch the video that I'm referring to, the exchange between Michael Jones and Jared Taylor, you will hear Michael Jones saying to Jared Taylor that white nationalists have no rights, but Catholics still do. And by refusing to acknowledge what the others think is the reality of race, he has alienated the more literal-minded people in the nationalist movement by denying what they would call the reality of race. Some people think he is deluded, that Michael Jones is deluded in denying the reality of race, but it's really very simple. Michael Jones is trying to get white people to adopt a religion because he knows race cannot be their religion. So what he's saying is, the moment you talk about being white or whiteness or white people, you will have painted yourself into the corner of being a white nationalist, which means you will be promoted to being a white supremacist, which means you will be on some watch list for being a domestic terrorist. And for this reason, you will lower yourself in status the moment you talk about whiteness. And a lot of white people don't understand this because I just don't think that they're capable of grasping simple ideas now. Now, I'm in conversation with somebody who I would expect to grasp these simple concepts, but who vehemently disagrees with me and calls Michael Jones deluded. I don't think he's deluded. I think he knows how to play the game and understands the reality of having a religion, because having a religion gives you a protected characteristic, particularly when you are an ancient religion, as ancient as Roman Catholicism, which is the religion of Michael Jones. So by denying the reality of race that he calls, but he confusingly calls a category of the mind, he has discombobulated many people identifying with nationalism. But I think he's being clever in not saying, in denying the concept of race. Because by constantly harping on about race, you will be identifying yourself as a white nationalist and the consequences of so doing. So Michael Jones is saying, don't do it. Don't do your ticky torch thing. Don't be forever harping on about whiteness and white culture and white people, because that is the equivalent of wearing a kick me sign after lowering me in status. So that's quite easy to understand, but I think a lot of people have a mental block. And what Michael Jones is doing is very neatly pushing people into a corner. Well, a certain group of white people into a corner and forcing them to consider whether they will adopt a religion or not. And he's saying Catholicism is the one to adopt. I disagree, but I'm not going to disagree with the basic premise of E. Michael Jones, who says race cannot be your religion. Disappointingly, there are quite educated people who can't understand this concept. So they obviously think that if they take over the government, everything will be fine and they will be the ones in charge. And I'm saying it's not so simple, because once you are in charge, you will be given power over the legislature. And this means you will be passing laws. How do you know if your laws are sensible? You don't really know. And if you are not respected, your laws will be generally ignored. And so, to take power, you need what is called legitimacy. And legitimacy is people thinking you have a right to be there because you're so wise and you're so strong and you're so well, you could be there because you're a warlord and you control all the organs of state because of your police force and your army, and you can do whatever you like because you have the monopoly on violence. Obviously, this is not ideal because rulers want to be thought of as having legitimate authority, and that is why they adopt religion, and why warlords of Europe, barbarian kings of Europe, before they Christianized, thought they would accept the bargain of the Catholic Church, which told them that that the Catholic Church would defend the divine right of kings to rule. If the king converted to Catholicism and made his subjects also subject to the authority of the Catholic Church. And that was basically the bargain. And this is something that E. Michael Jones refuses to discuss. This is what all Christians really refuse to discuss. It is an important part of their history and identity, how Europe came to be Catholic and Christian, and how the Catholic Church was a creation of the Roman Empire and even now lives on through the Pope, whose Latin name is Pontifex. And before Rome Christianized, the chief priest of Rome had the Latin name of Pontifex Maximus. So we can see this ancient connection between the 21st century and the Rome that must have been founded even before the 1st century. As we know, the Romans changed their identity over time. They started off as a people who hated kings and ended up as being the people who worshipped their deceased emperors. So from this statement, you will know that the Romans changed their religion. And if you don't care about these things, then I would put it to you that you don't understand history and don't care to. So E. Michael Jones tells white people to convert to Catholicism, and I say no, because the history of Christianity has been that of 500 years of continuous failure. It started off as Catholicism and then became Protestantism and then became cultural Christianity. And this means that there are no rules. Christianity is just a cultural idea. But nobody cares because they don't think they need rules. White people don't think they need an official moral system because their real religion has become a combination of wokeism and a combination of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, which are not official religions, obviously, but they are belief systems, the challenging of which will provoke a meltdown because it is heretical to a person's lived experience, whatever their belief system is, whether they believed Jews did it to them, and whether Muslims are a threat to the West. That is their belief system, and they can easily find a whole bunch of other people who share their beliefs. And it has become, in its own way, a quasi-religion. And when you challenge it, it provokes a meltdown and the end of any discussion. So I remain hopeful that there will be people in the West still capable of being persuaded by facts, arguments, and principles. I'm not quite sure if this is really the case, but I feel I owe it to humanity to keep trying. So, before I go, my answer must be that E. Michael Jones is less incorrect than Jared Taylor because it is actually a fact that race cannot be your religion. But then your religion must not be the worst religion in the world.